All right, Mopar people, welcome back to the channel. I'm just Mopar Joe. I got a little bit of body work left on the old Road Runner here, but she's coming along. I guess we can start in the back since we're here. I went ahead and drilled out my spot welds for this, and really, I mean, it looked just like that side. See how it's nice and covered, everything looks normal. You could sand and paint this, but that amount of rust was hiding underneath there, so I'm not sure how many years it would take for that to go ahead and come on through. So I'm glad I knocked that off. On my tub inside here, I went ahead and welded both my seams and just cleaned them up a little bit with a grinder. I may come back by and clean that up some more just to kind of dress it up some. But it's nice solid weld all the way through. I didn't have any pinholes or anything like that. And I went ahead and bolted my tub in. I just got a 3/8 bolt here, clamp, bolt, and then the long clamp there you can see. That worked out real nicely for me. It's kind of loose right now, but I think I'm gonna have to just trim just a shade off here, probably bend that one up, and she'll slide in. I can go ahead and start clamping all that stuff nice and tight, get it mocked in good. I've got to do some dressing on the opposite side of this, between where the pinch would be there. I want to get that cleaned up nicely and spray my weld through primer on it. I have the 3M weld through number 2, 05917, and that's basically a full can, so anywhere there's a seam, I want to spray over it after I clean it off, because I know, like, example, if I welded here, that old black E-coat or whatever stinks, and it burns off, and it just kind of leaves a weird crustiness between the layers. So if I can go ahead and grind it off first, I'll have nice metal on nice metal, and I can prime both sides. So then I have my primers in between there. Then later, oh yeah, I've been working in here too. Later I can go ahead and seal my seam up before totally dressing in here. I think we can do some kind of Raptor liner or an alternative to that and kind of get it back to an undercoated look after it's painted. I think it'll be nice, but I've got the majority of the old undercoat stripped off there. It didn't take long. If you see my little kind of dig in marks there, I went by with my air chisel. I could just run through real quick, and it's so much easier with the tub off. So I ran through and it just kind of broke it off, and then I could take my little vibrating scraper here and zipped it right off there. Anything else I wire wheeled off. I probably had that inner tub cleaned in less than 30 minutes, and I feel good about that. I know there's some people recommending go ahead and cut that out and do away with it and buy the new inner tubs from AMD that are widened. But no, I feel good about it. I think also I'll seal in between here. I did double weld some where there were little patches before, and like this spot in here I'm going to finish up again. But it connected the frame rail where they had beat it over before. I had a big spot down here that was folded in and ugly. So when we all go back together, that's going to look really nice. So y'all just give it some time and take my word for it. But overall, our seam looks good. In the tub on the inside, it's fairly tight. It's not perfectly there. You see my hole that I had to drill. I just ran a bolt through that so I could take my special professional jacking apparatus here. See that curve? That curve actually matched right there, and I jacked up with my floor jack, and it pulled that on up into where it needed to be. But here's the front side of my tub, and I'll go through today and drill out my remaining little spot welds here. I'll probably go ahead and melt my lead out here and break it loose on the bottom, because I want to get that quarter mocked on better. The plan is basically have this side welded. I don't have to have it finished, but welded in for some nice structure before I go cutting that one off. That way I don't have a car just hanging out here. And also I don't have twice the mess in the shop. So once I get this side done, I might actually jack the car up and move it over, slide it over a couple feet, so it'll give me a lot of room on the other side. Drilled through a couple spots, 1 and 2 there. I can actually weld those up, just stick my piece of metal behind it, weld, and then peel the piece of metal off, like aluminum or copper, before I try to hang the quarter. But you can see what's happening here. It's all wavy and funky looking. And then I took my flat sander, small, and just knocked this off. And you can see the high spots, how shiny they are. And then the low spots are still white. So what I'm going to do is work that stuff with some dollies, hammer and dolly it. Here's the old school, but it's a little bit large. I can get it in some places, but I got into the old stash here. I had some workers in my family. They had some good stuff. That was Art Pierce's there. But yeah, you can see how some of these can form better. I can go right behind, get a nice flat. Even if I want to use that big flat side, it's fine. Some of these are pretty trick, like that dude. You know? If I want to go here, I'm going to make this stuff really nice. And I'll probably put my camera down and not force you to watch me for 30 minutes to an hour, or however long it is. But my body shop mentor says this front edge is very crucial. When people open your door, they always look at that and see what kind of quarter job you did. Also, doing a really nice job around the taillight panel, having that all look good. And then trunk gaps, of course, because I can move that panel in and out a little bit with the railing, but also sliding it here, deciding where it's going to live and go. And that seam. The rest of it you can kind of, let's say you'll have to still worry about it, but it's not as critical. So if you'll remember, before I cut this quarter off, I aligned my door the best I could to that front fender, to the old quarter, and more importantly, to our channel up here. So all that has stayed the same. I mean, the door hangs on the front hinge, so they're nice and tight. What I want to do while I'm hammering and dollying, this has got a nice gap here. Looks like we could wrap over and be pretty nice and tight. Then it goes kind of wonky through here, and then tightens back up here, and then loose again here. So I want to even that gap up to the door edge the best I can as I'm hammering also, so that when the quarter wraps around, I won't have any low dippy spots with this front panel. It's already getting better. I was able to hammer and dolly from dolly on this side, hammer on this side, and kind of flatten that back out. But I think what I want to do now is strip some more of this paint off, because the paint is actually smashing up against my dolly and not letting it conform like I want to. And again, the way I'm doing that, here's a little piece of my old sandpaper. This was, I think, some 120 grit, that the Velcro style. But I don't want to lose any metal, if you know what I mean. I don't want, I'm not out here trying to grind and grind. You can see somebody else's grinder marks. I did not do that. That was there. And you can see the old green paint too. So what I can do, I'll just show you. See how my paper wraps around? Kind of serves as a flat disc as well. But I can now put it on this edge and spin. I think I stripped that whole dude off there in, I don't know, less than 5 minutes or something with this. Worked really nicely. And these are old sheets of sandpaper. You can see how worn out they are on the edges, but I had just saved them for something like that. We're getting a lot closer here. You can see kind of these ugly bulged up spots. That's a big ugly no-no. So what I need to do here is tap. Those are all, it's a high, low, high, low, high, low. I'm gonna tap the highs down and I can get to the back side here and find my dolly. I might actually, I don't know if I can, yeah, see how that one pretty well conforms it. And again, I'll check it in places that are correct. But something like that, or even if I flip her over, it's hooking and making a beautiful spot to dolly behind there. Just like that. And here's my most favorite body hammer of all time. I don't know whose it was, but I'm glad it's here. But I'll just hammer all the way down that, boom, 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 boom. And we'll make that go away. We are doing so much better. This was our wavy spot here. You can look down that. It is wonderful. I think I've got this to the point of 98% straight. If anything, after my quarter goes on, I could skim that. Same thing with this stuff. Skim that with a little bit of glazing putty is all. And once it sands, 95% of the glazing putty would be gone. It just give you a nice look when you open the door. That's what it's all about. I do think I'm going to weld in where my blade hit earlier there, which I had to knock a big glob off where they had welded on before. Then I can go ahead and weld in my little holes like that, there, and I just got a piece of aluminum I can stick back there and sew them up. Got our lead out of here, just melted it out. I actually caught it in this old pan over here. I think here, I got myself the old fender that I cut out, just shoved it up under here. I was trying to keep the lead from just dripping and hitting and splattering all over me, so maybe it'll just drip down into this trough here. We're about to find out. I just got it clamped on the bottom. My gap from here down actually looks pretty good for spacing. So all my hammer and dolly work kind of turned out well for me. I'd like to come out just a little bit to meet my door here and make it happier. And when that happens, it would bring it out a little more here. But then you can kind of see I'm inward there. And then I'm just outside of it here. So the panels aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. I did go ahead, you can see I ground earlier to be sure I was at bare metal here instead of, you know, somebody had stacked a big glob of filler on there or something. I'm sure there's filler in this door, but currently it's looking pretty decent. And I think when I clamped down here, it actually had pulled that in some. So I want to reset that gap one more time. My other major issue, or main issue, it's not really major, I'd like that gap to follow right along with that. And I kind of don't like how that's pointed right there. and I'll show you what the other side looks like. So this door is pretty well lined up and all that. It has a slight point to it, but it's a little more rounded, and it's further outboard. But the gap tightens some there, but it's not as tight as mine. So I think what I'm going to do is readjust my panel one more time, and if that needs addressed on the other side, I'll go ahead and split straight through there and just bend that edge back and weld it up, grind it smooth. It's not a big deal. I don't want to cut too close to my outboard edge here because, you know, my little brace is under there. But I'm going to readjust again, and I'll bring you back. Otherwise, fitment is actually pretty good. I took my Wheelhouse out. I know it's kind of dark in here, but I took it out so I could go ahead and get my perfect fitment everywhere, and then I will make my house fit the new quarter instead of making the new quarter fit the house that wasn't actually designed, or let me say, it was not original to this car. So I'm introducing 2 new pieces of metal. It's just like building an engine. When you have 5 new parts all coming together, they'll need a little love. So again, I'm gonna try to move this up just slightly. I'll see how this changes, and then I'll realign that. I should be getting pretty close. My door gap is looking really nice. Again, I still have this spot right here. It does follow the door pretty nicely, but then it's too close right there. And it may not look like it, but I have danced with this quarter panel for about 3 hours. And you can think what you want to about me for that, but it takes time. One, because I had to try to fit up through here. You can see my little pull marks. That was where my vice grips under there were kind of pinching that. But I wanted to get this lined up. I had to pinch this over and pull it, and then get it down to where this line, if you look down it now, we're getting closer, where it'll be better. It's still not perfect, nothing's welded, obviously. Up here, I've had to trim more off this. I know a lot of people want to leave them long and shove them way up under there, but my goal is to actually weld myself a band of metal there. So I'll weld to the top side and weld to the bottom side, and then finish it all flat. Do just minimal filler, but it'll be a lot stouter and won't ever have to move. There'll be no movement later. Here's a panel piece that goes up under there, and on mine I just shaved it off about, I don't know, 1/4 inch in. But I actually could get around and cut the factory one. If I could show you that, you can see where it lines up with that factory, where my pinky is here. I can actually throw a weld right there, boom, and then pull my drip rail molding back up, hammer it up nice on the final install with all that. So I got to get cleaned up in here, clean up my surfaces, all that. But I guess I never realized how crucially important the quarters are in holding the car up. I got my old railroad jack here on some cinder blocks, and I got it under the tail panel, which this was already bent. Don't blame me for that. I can hammer and dolly it back flat anyway, but somebody had that same idea before, I think. Threw a couple bolts in here, clamped here. This is still a little out of whack, but that's fine because I don't have my extensions in, or my wheel tub, or wheelhouse housing, as you'd like to call it, whatever. I got all that stuff out of the way. So I think I'm about ready to pull the quarter back off, put my outer wheelhouse back in, get it back into place, and then see if I can get the quarter back into place then. I know it's a lot of test fitting between each step, but I'm trying to do it as nice as I can. And I do think I'm going to go ahead, before I do that, cut through here, bend this over. So let me bring you back after I get that cut. It is actually supposed to lay further in here so that the felt itself lines up with that door edge. So all that looks good. I got a little clamp hanging in there. And I just dressed that up with a flap disc, kind of knock off the ugly edge and peel back some of that E-coat stuff. And It's just a piece of metal. There you go. See where it was, how close. I'm kind of liking that. I think I could go a little bit more. I don't think it's worth it. I think I'll put my little piece of metal back in and get her stitched back up here. One thing I will do is just kind of knock this down. If you can see how it just barely raised, just slightly there. And I don't want to have a weld and then a low spot beyond the weld. So if I get it tapped back into sync with each other, then I can do my weld. It's going to be like minimum, very minimal filler there. So let me get my favorite body hammer back out, give her a tap, and we'll weld her up. And I didn't want to grind anymore because the more you grind, the thinner the metal gets. So I have it now where it could take just a minimum wipe of probably spot putty. I don't even think it needs filler here. I'm a little, maybe slightly low there, but what I can also do when this quarter comes off is just take my hammer and dolly and touch it up just a little bit. It's not going to take very much. Here's our old familiar tub. I did have it on before, and I was test fitting with it. And you can see I knocked a little bit of paint off here, here, and there, because they were really scuffed up. Like when I was trying to hang the panel originally, that was the rub spots. So I just took the coating off. I also took the coating off between here because it's got to come off anyway. I'll shoot it with the primer. But if I can get the quarter hung on to where it'll latch again and everything will be happy, then I can pop the tub off and prep it and go ahead and weld it in, and then go after this area here. Quarter install, I'm going to go ahead and cut this junk out, which in theory I could patch it with the new quarter on. I'm going to have to do some patchwork with the new quarter on anyway, but I want a piece of metal that'll slip under here and I can weld back to this for a little more strength. Got to take care of that stuff. Anyway, I'll let you watch me struggle hanging this quarter up. It's not quite perfect, but it's getting closer. I got to work my gap at the bottom again. Since I put my wheel tub in, it has just barely tightened it too much. So I'll work on that. I actually need to pull the whole quarter off again to, I think, raise the tub slightly in the front. It'll allow this to pull back some. So I'll get to that. But I went ahead and put my trunk lid on, which is fun to do by yourself. Luckily, the trunk floor is out, so I could set the trunk on, crawl under, pick the trunk up, stick the trunk on. I got a long enough wingspan to do that. I got a couple trunk keys here. These are Mopar specific trunk keys, if you've never seen them. That's a joke. Anyway, I got to check my gap here, and it looks pretty good. I just have a paint stick for, you see that color, vitamin C orange. I painted the hood not long ago, but I was using it for a reference. I know that's a little bit tight for a trunk gap if it was only that thickness, but It's just a reference right now. They sell little gauges that you can use, but you can see it slides and stops right there. So what I'm going to do is just pop this bolt loose. I could probably leave that one alone. Pop this bolt loose, move us over just slightly until our gap evens up some. And I would almost like to tighten this up just ever so slightly. So when I pull my quarter off, you can see I kind of have that bevel here. I can break it just a little bit more so that that'll pull slightly tighter right there at the bottom. Pull us in here. If we look at the other side, and it's hard to say on this because I think this is a quarter replaced. The trunk lid and Dutchman panel are original to the car. I could tell that. But I think both quarters, something was up with them. I don't know. You can see kind of the ugly braze marks and all that. I've talked about it before. Just something, you know. And it was once gold, so the car's changed color a bunch of times. See this? Now, this door gap is super wonky. So my one on the other side actually is better than this, far better so far. And I can improve it before we sew it up. But this trunk gap is kind of about what I would like. Maybe a little tight right here. But if we grab our stick, and keep in mind that there's 3 layers of paint on the edge of that trunk, but stick comes down and stops about there. And then if we look at the flat part of the stick, our trunk lid is higher than the quarter here, which I would kind of like to correct. Not that I want to sink the trunk lid, but make it better. Our Dutchman panel is higher, so it probably has filler in it. I can see some there. So all that's getting ground off anyway, but just as a reference, this side doesn't matter as much. But my trunk lid is slightly higher than the quarter right there. So just using that for a reference, if we come over, my quarter is higher than the trunk lid here. And then we check the back, obviously quarter is much higher. And here the trunk lid is higher. So, like I said, let me pop these bolts loose and we'll try to do a little correcting action. Clamp my rail down. You see this big slider vice grip. Then I clamped that way. Then I released this and I reclamped it. And I released this and I reclamped it so it's nice and tight against the rail or the trunk gutter itself all the way down. See, there's barely any flex in that. And then I just shot a self-tapping screw in it, so I should be able to, and also retighten my bolts. I got my tail light panel pretty well aligned on the outside edge here. Pop these free. I'm assuming we wouldn't have any movement, but I needed the quarter to go down, and I needed to go that way, so this should accomplish that for me. Let's see if we went too far, or see, it looks better. Still not quite as much as I'd like. Get my stick. The stick will not stick until I get to right there. I can drag it through at least, but other side, it's about the same. I'd still like it just a shade wider right here. So I'll pop my lid, kind of hammer us over just a little bit, get us some good adjustment there. I might also can work on the quarter itself where the lip comes down. It looks like it actually comes down and goes at an angle, where if it came down straight, that would give me just a shade more gap right there. So let me work on that and I'll be back. Now my trunk gap is a lot closer. It's not perfect yet, but I'm going to need to pull the quarter. So I just make my notes. Whenever I pull the quarter, I'm going to bend that edge, bend the quarter edge out slightly, bend the other edge in slightly. Also clean both surfaces so much. So my next step, I've got the back glass put in, and I have this little hook here to space it up. The other side's still full of goop and all that in that corner, so it's holding it up nicely for a reference there. I have to make myself some little patch panels to go under here, which I don't think is a big deal at all. And while I do it, see, I've got some right here. I'm going to cut this out, make my panel, and then weld across here. And then I can actually, so it'll be kind of like a Z panel, Z shape, goes flat, comes up, Z's back, and then I can weld there and then grind it to get my edge back. So I can try to do minimal filler on that. And the same panel, which if I get that one patched, that's great. Then I can make my other panel to go into here and then just connect the two. Or my other panel that goes under this can actually go under here. That's probably what I'll do. And run it under that point. So this will actually kind of have a different Z and then a breakover. I'll be using my 10 snips a lot and taking my time. I don't think it'll be a big deal. This car needs the door jambs done anyway. The door would have to come off at some point. And I was tired of fighting my gap between the new quarter and the door. I had it perfect. It was perfectly wonderful. I put the Wheelhouse in. It tightened the gap back up. So I come up to the front and I see I have plenty of gap up here all the way. So I'm just gonna move the door forward. I loosened both sets. I'm using my jack, I'm lightly prying. The door just will not go. Here's why. So, best I can tell, that's just some old seam sealer or something funky that was in these cracks from the factory. So they probably squirted them full, smacked the thing on there, tightened it up, just to keep moisture and whatever else out of and away from the threads and out of the inside of the car. It's a good practice. And when I go back permanently with the hinges, I'll do that too. But for today, I'm throwing them away and I am hanging that door without them. You can see I've sanded that down to bare metal and shot it with just my rust encapsulator. It works great for a primer. It works great for if I'm going to come back later and paint this. But that black in there looks better anyway than the miles and pounds of overspray. So that's going to be great. I also did the back side of my hinges. So I'm going to hang this door back up. And I'm going to redo my door gap front and redo my quarter gap in the back. I'm pretty satisfied with this door gap now. And you can see where I did my deal earlier. But I was able to slide that door forward, get the correct gap all the way. And you'll see how this is higher than that. The reason being, that goofy hinge is worn out. So I can adjust my striker up, slam the door real hard, and make it line up if I want to. But what I'd rather do is either fix that front bottom hinge or replace it. I moved back here to make my patch panel, and I got a little old metal laying around from the other day, and you can see how quickly see all my fingerprints on here. I had cleaned any of the metal preservative off. Yeah, see there? Those are fingerprints. And I got a piece of just old thin cardboard. Made myself a deal for right here. It's going to have a little curve, just like that. Ready to cut and replace. I'm going to draw my lines and weld it in. Curves every direction. There's my quick little corner patch. I've got it, I basically just ran my hand through here, pulled it up from the inside, stuck a screw in here, so there is a nice little flange under here. And excuse me, where I stacked over there, I just went ahead and welded my little seams. But it's going to be behind everything forever, so it doesn't super matter. But now quarters got to come off for me to be able to weld behind here, because there's about a 2-inch strip that needs to be addressed there. Otherwise, I did, I can get that open. I went ahead and fixed this hinge. We looked for a bushing kit online, and they're out of stock everywhere, whatever. Didn't want to buy a new one, so I talked to the owner and I said, I can fix it. So basically I found a like a chromed bolt head. It was actually an old valve cover hold down, and was able to open the holes up to where it just barely fit through there. Super, super, super tight. The bottom side, I actually left small so I could it had a nice press fit into it. The top side, I just laid a washer on top of it and welded it. So it kind of has a little button head like factory. And after I pressed through the bottom, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but I had all this in a vise, so all that was easy on me. I went ahead and laid another washer on the bottom and just sewed it up just like I did that. So it's fully pinned forever, and she works real nice. My door gap, excuse me, almost perfect. If anything, I may try to pull over a little more here whenever this gets actually welded, but I can do that then. Same thing back here, like I need to knock my drip rail perfectly into place, but I don't want to have it all in line and have to pull the quarter off again. So I'm gonna get my holes marked. I still have to weld my inner tub to the frame pieces, whatever, inner structure, and I think I'm gonna be good to go. But I'm really tickled right now with the way this is lined up. I know it's kind of hard to tell on camera. Let me see if I can find a straight edge. See, there's a little rock there, but the rock is from my quarters high there. Quarters barely high there. Well, look here, my door's high. See how quickly that can change? And I have no idea how much filler is actually inside of this door itself. So see how the quarter kind of narrows in there? Same thing. So the door is kind of the door is kind of pushed out just a little bit at the bottom, and I can play with my hinges more, try to get it in some, but my gap down here turned out pretty nice. There we go. So it fits the quarter itself and has the same amount of space here as it does here, and pretty well all the way up. So everywhere you see the pretty silver is the 3M Weld Through #2 primer, and everywhere you see black is Eastwood's Rust Encapsulator. So I went ahead, pulled all the guts out. I just laid them nicely inside the car. There's a mess in there, I know, but I have all that where I can bolt it right back in. I didn't mess with any of my, see, it's still ugly in here, but I can still see where every bolt was, and I'm going to put them right back in exactly where they were. Weld through up here, weld through down my wonderful channel here. I still got to clamp and weld that. You can see my ugly little booger weld on that corner piece that I made, but it's going to be nice. That one little screw hole there is where the quarter lays on and screws into place. All that's good, so I'll clamp that, screw that. The Wheelhouse has to go on next, and I've got it sprayed. I went ahead and split this and pulled it up some. That way I can, once the Wheelhouse is nice and tight and I do my surrounding welds, I'm going to pull it down, weld it here, weld it there, weld it here. Trunk gutter, same thing. I got all my old white ugly seam sealer out of there. Tail light panel, same thing. All this stuff still getting cleaned up after this quarter goes on, and I get basically before I put the trunk pan in, I'll have this actually secured to something like the quarter, and then I can go into my trunk pan and other stuff. But that's another video, because I got plenty left to do here. I'm going to eventually finish this out, not today. But I got to get that Wheelhouse on. I just wanted to show you a quick little update here. And I'm going to actually film me working on this some more. I still need to finish prepping the Wheelhouse. Sitting right here, I've got all my holes drilled. I actually need to open those, a few of those up still. The other ones are punched. On the inside, you can see how much I've prepped that already. Sanded, mostly down to bare metal. I had to hand sand into here. I took my other little sander and knocked all that stuff off. So any bare metal, that's great. There's plenty of bite here. I think I used 120. So all that's good. I need to still shoot this with weld through. So I'll be going weld through. Those two will sandwich together. I also took my flap disc and got most of the black old ugly paint off of this, or the E-coat, so that while I'm welding it's not burning off and stinking. I feel good about that. I think I can go in with my tub now. A trick that I saw, I do believe it was on Who's Your Garage from Adam. Just take you a screwdriver and get in and dig out where that weld through primer was. You'll tell a world of difference whenever your wire hits that. It's almost like that primer doesn't conduct electricity. Like it's a good solid coating on there. So I went through so far and did a bunch of these on this side, and I was going to start just welding here, like weld these two, move my clamps, so on and so forth. But I want it to be tight, tight, tight everywhere I can. So even on this one, if I can pick this clamp up and move it just to the inside of that, I will. And as long as I can get my wire through there, it should be good to go. Let me see if that'll work or not. So whenever the trunk pan goes in, I'm going to paint the tubs, both sides, and everywhere that I can reach inside this car. That's the time I'm going to paint that stuff. So when my quarter goes on here, I'm going to have it scuffed where I can prime it and shoot it. I'm not going to go ahead and paint it. Some guys like to. That's cool, whatever you're into. Right now, anything that's black like this, that is my Eastwood rust encapsulator, which I've painted over 1,000,000 times. All you got to do is scuff it. But right now it's keeping, that was all bare metal. I sanded it all again, shot it with Eastwood rust encapsulator, and now it will be protected. Same thing with my little welds here. I started getting somewhat better as I went along, but I think this is totally fine. Everything's strong. It's very strong. I went ahead, actually had to go through here and weld, hold my welder. I'll just put my hand up here. See my hand here? I could see through this hole and weld to the back side where that pinch is there. And I got a couple small C clamps like this that I could get through, hang it over the lips and squeeze them all together, and then weld, pick it up, move it. See, that one has plastic jaws. So from here forward, I went ahead and sprayed my Eastwood rust encapsulator undercoating, just to have a little bit of something in here, protection, whatever. Likely nothing will ever land here, but if it gets water on it, whatever, it just run down. Eventually we can do our major rhino lining or whatever we're going to do in here, probably raptor liner, if I can make a suggestion. But yeah, so I've shot that in here. I put all my window guts back in, lubed them all. You can kind of see my ugly white grease, but they just, I mean, it's butter smooth now. Everything's wonderful there. So that looks nice. I think it's time to hang the quarter. I can put this little plastic back on. It prepped. Same way, if it's gray, it's weld through primer. I shot more from here rearward will actually get painted green, just like the rest of the trunk. So I did not put my spray through primer on the top side because I'll be welding here and then smoothing those down and then priming them just like the other stuff. Same thing here, you can kind of see where I prime from the bottom side. It is finally time to weld our quarter on the car. I'm trying to chase perfection the best I can. Need to do a little more clamping in here because my Dutchman is just slightly too high, but I'm not welding that yet. My trunk gap, you see I got some flex here. My trunk gap actually improved. You'll see. I think it looks really good. And I was sweating. Let me go ahead and close this. I was worried about this tail panel piece of trim here. It's made out of pot metal, some kind. And I just couldn't get it lined up. I was looking up and looking down it, looking up and looking down it, looking round and round and round it. It's much better right now than when I was doing all that, but you see our quarter's just a little higher there. I called my mentor, Body Shop Brian, and he says, well, if you need to later, you can always put a little filler on that. And I said, well, it has some high spots, and I noticed this little crack right here, right there. So I just grabbed my Durablock with some 220 on it and ran over it real quick, and you can see multiple layers of filler already on it. So I'm trying to, or I was trying to, line up this piece that's full of filler and matched up to an old janky quarter to a new nice AMD quarter, and it was just not working. So I'm fairly close right now. I feel pretty good about that. Obviously this has got to come off for me to weld behind it, but I wanted to check it ahead of time. You see my trunk gap here looks nice. If anything, the trunk may come up some, but I have a good old piece of trunk rubber, Mopar factory style, and I had actually thought about laying it in there and closing the trunk, because what happens, one, the latch is not adjusted because the latch is not really attached to the inner structure very well, but the latch will come up and let the lid itself raise and match to this. But also a fat rubber that's brand new will also raise your trunk a little bit. So I feel really good with where this is at right now. It's ready to weld. After I clamp it, all this looks nice. I think I'll have a nice straight transition here. I'll have my nice flat band of metal that connects this. You'll see me do that at some point. The door edge looks good. Door gap looks good. Inner fender tub, I've got a million clamps on there. All that looks sanitary to me. I think I'm ready. I didn't want to do it and then have to redo it. So I want to do my sail panel first. This, to me, this is like one of the most structural parts of the whole panel. So doing here and down that trim edge. Then I want to move from that to the very front edge of this. And then I'll start in the center of this, just like you torque a head down, welding that, and just work my way out until that whole front side's done. Feel good about that. And then I'll finish getting her welded up. I don't want to skip all around doing small spots. I feel like that might kind of crease my panel up or make it odd, but everybody has their own way. Lots of good channels out there on doing body work. I just kind of dabble in it every so often. Anyway. I think I did all right on those. I kind of like that one the best. It kind of laid a little flatter. I'm gonna just have to knock the tops off before I put my band of metal in. I drilled holes here thinking there was brace there, but there's not. So what I'm gonna do is probably take my little spreader and kind of pull the top up a little and pull that down some. But feel pretty solid about that, looking nice. I gotta lean my head in here and weld. If you'll remember, there's that straight line right there where my new panel meets the old panel, and then I can kind of tap this stuff up. But I think I'm gonna keep moving on. See how she goes. Went ahead and clamped and leaned around here. Got me 3 little tacks or spots, whatever you want to call it. They're not tacks. Bondo Billy will tell you so. I didn't mess with that one yet. I'm going to start in the center, go back and forth, and I think I can get my long clamp down and through there, so I can start in the center. And every so often I'm going to shut my door just to be sure. If there is something I can just barely pull out and weld, I'm going to do it. I'm looking for, you know, at least trying to match up 90% from our body line to our body line. So let's see how good we can do. My panel just goes uphill slightly there, but the lip itself is thinner than the factory one. And I know I had to drill out previously a couple spot welds up through here. So I think I'm going to put me a row of them through here and then weld my bottom. The front side looks pretty nice. You see it's just slightly above it. And for the most part, it does match up. There needs to be clamped more there, but what I think I'm gonna do is start in the middle move my clamps around and then just kind of work my way from the center out till I get to here and there. My door edge looks pretty good, and there's no telling how much filler's in this door, but just like everything else, I'll claim that work. It looks pretty nice. Nothing on these old cars is ever perfect. Anyway, let me go to weld. I think what I'm going to do, I got 2 holes between these 3 clamps. Actually, there's 5 clamps if you count them all. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to weld these 2. I'm going to move them outboard. Every time I go through here, I've got my big blunt chisel, and I can tap around. I can flatten it nice. I want this to be tight, 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 tight. So I'm welding, I'll be tapping and tightening. I'll do a couple. I'm not going to film this whole thing. I don't have enough battery power. Got my tub welded, outer wheelhouse, front seam, sail panel, back of the window channel. And now I think, before I weld to the Dutchman, I'm gonna clamp this really nice and weld all the way down it. So basically just swap my clamps, clamp, just like I have been, and alternate. So when I get it in, I can do my sail and then finish with my tail light panel here. It hasn't moved at all. It only has a couple screws in it, so I want to make it more solid. Make that my last step. Then I can dress down the welds. Wonderful tail light panel. I have been scraping these out. I also saw that on Guzzi, G-U-Z-Z-I. Type that in. You'll see some really nice Mopars getting restored. I stole a lot of ideas from him as well. Don't forget our buddy Dave at Rust Bucket Restos, who got us this awesome quarter panel. Both quarter panels, actually. I've got to call it for the day and all the days on this video. I'm welded up, and I think for the most part everything's wonderful. Some of my welds are a little taller than I'd like, but I got good penetration. You can see that everywhere. Our inner tub's still ugly, but that's going to be a whole nother video. I could make a million videos out of this project, but I'm trying not to bore y'all too much. Back here, where it was easy to weld, these turned out pretty nice. And they're just, you know, basically burn-in pools. I'd weld and just circle them in. Some of them I had to go back and touch up a little bit, but I think they're gonna knock off real nice and look good. Tail light panel. Dropped a few red hot cherries into my shoe, so that felt good. And again, all this stuff cleans up. But overall, we got a quarter panel on our 70 Road Runner. Gaps look good. Alignment looks good. It's just a little project. So anyway, hope y'all are staying warm out there. It's probably gonna be a cold one soon. So I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch you next time.